So first of all, thank you, sir, for joining us and for taking this course. Not take much more time. My only hope is, through a course like this, many more younger students will be inspired to take this field, the area of self-discovery, as a very rigorous pursuit in their lives. And hopefully, in the future, we'll have more such courses and more such places in the country to do this, and for the students to learn from, masters like TM. So, without any further ado, I'll just pass.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor. On my side, it's a privilege to address the IIT Delhi. You're sitting in the center of all that happens in this country, and your IIT is one of the most important IITs in the country. And so I'm so happy that you have decided that the students and others, of course, I don't want to name the staff because everybody I know, all who are here right now, Professor Jyoti, Professor Gomez, Professor Rahul Garg, and all the others who are here, who I don't know by name. I would like to start like Professor Rahul Garg said, exploring the consciousness. There is Professor Harish Chaudhary here. Yes. So we are going to start with that. I was given a list of what we are going to do. And the first thing on the list is experiences of altered state of consciousness by the sages. Now, before we go into that, I think we need to look at the perspective of what the most ancient teachings on consciousness, I would say most ancient in India, but probably is most ancient in the world, the Upanishads. So the teaching process also should be, I would expect to be like that in the Upanishads. So therefore, let me, to the young people who are here, who probably might think, now I want to also say that I might use a lot of Sanskrit, but I will translate everything that I use. And please don't think that Sanskrit is a denominational language, that it belongs to a particular religion or culture. Yes, culture, yes. But Sanskrit is an ancient language, and the ancient texts that we have in this country have all been done in Sanskrit. And not only the philosophical texts, but also Kavya, Kalidasa. Kalidasa didn't write anything about religion, but it's the great epic poet Valmiki. Then Aryabhata and other mathematicians, and the ancient texts called the Vimanadhikara and so on, they're all written in Sanskrit, and maths is one particular. Vedic mathematics is a very important part of our culture. So when I use Sanskrit, don't think that Sanskrit is some kind of a foreign language. Unfortunately, people today don't know the language, and therefore they're likely to say, oh, again, scriptures. So I'm going to start with that. There is a beautiful Upanishad which has only 12 verses. It is the shortest Upanishad in the literature called the Upanishads. Now, before we go into that, to understand how we approach this subject or how the sages approach this subject of consciousness, I'd like to explain to you the meaning of the word Upanishad first. There is a tendency to think that Upanishads are not for everyone. They are very complicated. Everybody cannot understand it, or that you have to become a renunciant or a sannyasin to understand it, and so on. All misunderstandings. When I was with Babaji, my guru, Maheshwarnath Babaji, he said, make it a point to teach the Upanishads because they are not as people think. Of course, there are complicated Upanishads, but they are direct, simple, and to the point. But how you look at the point and explore is not easy. But they don't try to deliberately complicate anything. They're very straightforward and clear. And it's one of my jobs given to me is to simplify the Upanishads and let people understand the treasures that we have in this country. So Upanishad. Now, we are familiar with the word Vedanta. Everybody says Vedanta. Now, what is the meaning of the word Vedanta? Here I would like to say something. Many, many years ago, I went to Harvard and I had a talk at one of a small group in Harvard. I'm talking about the late 90s. And as I was talking, a professor who was sitting in front was listening very carefully to what was going on. The subject was understanding Vedanta. So he said, "Sir, excuse me, I need to ask you something." I said, "Yes, sir." So he stood up and he said, he didn't stand up, he put up his hand and he said, "When you say Vedanta, because you're saying Vedanta, the subject is Vedanta, which Vedanta are you talking about? Is it the Advaita Vedanta of Shankara? Or the Vishishta Advaita of Ramanuja? Or the Dvaita Vedanta of Madhvacharya? Or all that is in between, Vallabha and so on?" I was very happy because you talk about Vedanta in India, nobody even knows that Vedanta has so many parts. I was surprised. He was not an Indian. He was a professor from Harvard doing his philosophy. He was teaching philosophy in studies. So we need to bring about this awareness in our youngsters that there is a vast subject untouched. And like Professor Garg said, when you go into IITs, you're in institutions which are elite, which are supposed to give you scientific understanding. When you come out, you're a perfect scientist or a technology, whichever way you want to call it. I think there's much more to it than physical science when you say science. This is one of the arguments that's going on. Anything that cannot be explained by the so-called physical science of today doesn't exist. I'm saying, can we move forward a little? There was a time when people thought that the world was flat. Galileo had to end it. For years, we have been working on Newtonian physics. And then Einstein had to break it. What I'm trying to say is a mindset of exploring and not saying, oh, it is all done, this is over. Has to be there. This is very important, especially for young people who are studying science, that the curiosity and the interest in exploring new things, because all the answers may not be there in what we have already done and studied. There may be more answers coming up. There are more things to explore. And I am of the idea that the tools to explore consciousness are not very much available today in so-called physical science. We have to step out a bit. And then perhaps you can find out ways and means, perhaps even gadgets, to help you to explore it. But first we need to have a base. We need to have a theory to explore. We need to have a hypothesis. Now, geometry has a hypothesis, Pythagoras theorem, whole geometry, that the square of the hypotenuse will be equal to the square of the base plus the altitude. Right. Now, how do you prove it? By actually drawing and perfecting a triangle, you prove it. So before proving, you have a hypothesis, right? And then you set about trying to find out, explore how to prove this. I would say that when you come across passages in the Upanishads, for instance, or in the Yoga Shastras, which appear to you as hypothesis, suspend your judgment and say, I'm going to explore and find out. Don't reject it out of hand, saying, oh, this is a mere hypothesis. Hypothesis can be proved. And if at the end, if you cannot prove it, you can reject it. So let's look at it that way. as a study, as an exploration. Now, Upanishads. When you say Vedanta, the word Vedanta means, I'm saying this because there are many young people who probably haven't been told or not studied this, not so important that we think, but they are very important. The subject we are dealing with is the core of our consciousness. What am I actually? Who am I actually? Am I only this body with the brain working constantly and so on, getting married, having children, dying? I mean, am I more than that? Or I'm just this little ID? So for 2,000 years, the identity crisis has existed, not new. People started asking, who are you? Nowadays, if you have a fight in the street, then you probably ask, who do you think you are? So this, who am I and what am I really? What is my connection to the world? This has been a very old crisis, nothing new. And the rishis have tried to explore this question and find answers to this. This is what we need to understand. Plus, the fact that there are other modes of understanding than the ordinary 1 plus 1 is equal to 2. Again, quantum physics has worked on this and proved that sometimes Newtonian physics doesn't have the answer when it comes to the ultimate units of nature. In fact, we don't even know exactly how they behave or what they do. We can only, because we can't see it. Not the most powerful microscope can see a quantum unit. You know it only through the reactions when they pass through a certain chamber. And so today the controversy still goes on whether the smallest unit is a particle or a wave. Nobody knows. So from absolute certainty of Newtonian physics, we have come to the uncertainty of the law of probability. Probably. People have even gone to the extent of saying it could be dependent on the observer. Nothing has been proved yet. It's for you young people to go into this and prove and find out what it is all about. Now, all I'm saying is, so have an healthy interest in exploring these matters. Open up your mind. Don't stick to the principle of only 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. Maybe in arithmetic. We need to go beyond arithmetic. We need to go into abstract mathematics and beyond. So, Vedanta. You know the Vedas, the 4 Vedas, the Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda. These are the 4 Vedas, and they're very ancient. Still, the controversy is on how old they are. They're very old. And perhaps they might have been written, they were not written in those days, they were studied by rote, repeated, and somebody picked it up. Writing came much later. It was Veda Vyasa who actually compiled the Vedas, which were scattered, and made them into 4 sections. In fact, the word Vyasa in Sanskrit means a compiler. If you simply say Vyasa, it means a compiler. Veda Vyasa, one who compiled the Vedas. Now, the 4 Upanishads, the 4 Vedas. Now, if you read the Vedas, if you look into them, something interesting comes up. When you say Veda, it is not just the Samhita or the hymns portion, which is the Vedas. Vedas is a big body of literature starting with Samhita, then to the Brahmanas, which are rituals to be performed, and which have a reason, of course. And then the Aranyakas, that part of the Vedas which are studied in the forests, in the Aranya. And from Aranyakas, there is a smooth movement towards the Upanishad, which is the essence and the crux of the Vedas, which explained the 4 Mahavakyas which are in the Vedas, which we will look into later. We won't look into that. The 4 formula, the 4 hypotheses. For them, it is a certainty because the rishis saw it not with their ordinary limited brain, but with something beyond. This is what we are trying to explore. Is there something other than the understanding that comes with our limited, so-called logical, rational blueprint. We are exploring. I'm not saying you should accept it or reject it. Let's look into this. So, this is the Vedas. So, since the Upanishads come at the end of the Vedas, the last part of the Vedas, therefore they are called Veda Anta, end of the Vedas. It also means that which, when studied, one has completed one's studies. Anta. These are the two word meanings of Vedanta. Now, the word meaning of Upanishad. Upanishad has three parts: Upa, Ni, and Shat. Now, Upa means near. What is Upavasa? To move towards nearer to the Supreme. Not fasting. I mean, it's good to fast. That's a different matter. It's a practical thing. But the real meaning of Upavasa is to move towards nearness of that Supreme Being. Now, Upa therefore means to go closer, to come closer. Now, there are many, those days, there was no internet. I hope, I don't know, I'm not so sure yet, but perhaps there was no internet. And so, when you talk important things, you can't sit in Delhi and talk to me in Madanapalli. You have to come and sit in front of me. Now, while internet is fine, without that we won't be able to do this. I must say there is a lot of difference from actually sitting face to face and studying. There is no replacement for it, of course. So the rishis, who are the teachers, they sat close to the students and taught these matters, which were called rahasyas. Why were they called rahasyas, secrets? Not because they wanted to keep it away from others or the general public. It's because they were dealing with such powerful forces and understanding that in wrong hands it could be used in a different way. You're unleashing a 100 megaton bomb by teaching a guy how to press the button who doesn't know that he should not press the button. So it was treated confidentially, not because of any other reason. So the teachers sat close to the student. Therefore, upa, to move closer to the teacher, it also means to move closer to the truth. Because from the point of view of the Upanishads, when you actually touch the truth, there is only the truth. You don't exist. So all you can say is to move close as possible. And the last syllable, shad. Shad, literally translated, would mean sit, sitting down. So sitting down, sitting close to the teacher and listening to what is being said. So shad means sit down. Adi Shankaracharya, who was a great expert in Sanskrit meanings, said shad also means, one of the meanings of shad is to shake up, agitate, to shake up. To shake up what? To shake up the ideas that we have so far, the way we think so far, and to explore if there are other modes of thinking which are different from the modes in which we are now. How are we taught? From there's an object here, and I'm here, and if I need to get that object, I have to move in a linear fashion and touch it. Now, Upanishads are dealing with consciousness. Consciousness is here, there, and everywhere. So how do you move to something which exists right here? How? I mean, if something is there, I have to move there. But if something is here also, there's no movement. In fact, when all movement stops, perhaps what touches, we'll discuss that later. So, shad means to shake up your ideas. In the Bhagavad Gita, 15th chapter is called Purushottama Yoga. I'm discussing Upanishad, but please remember the Gita is also an Upanishad. It's the essence of the Upanishad in simple words. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishads Brahma Vidyayam. That's how it is taught. Now, the 15th chapter gives a very nice metaphor, very interesting. It describes Urdhva Moolam Mathashakam. There is an upside down people tree, Ashwata tree, whose roots are up above and branches down below. Normally we don't see such trees. The roots are down and the branches are up. It's a turning around of your way of thinking. If you look at it, the human body is similar to what has been described. The roots are here. Everything starts from here. The brain controls the whole body. This is the root. And then the rest of the branches are the body. This is one of the explanations. It's wider than that. So, Shad means to shake up your mode of thinking. Shankara also said, shake one up from the sleep of ignorance. Then there is this middle word, ni. Upanishad. The ni is a link between the two words, and it indicates the position of the seeker in connection with one who is teaching. The one who is teaching is here, and the one who is studying is here, because as Maheshwara, my teacher, explained to me, when you pour something from a vessel, you cannot pour into another vessel which is held on top. It has to be down. You receive it. So the receiving point is called ni. And it is, of course, the root of the word niche in Hindi. That means I'm sitting down, looking up, listening carefully to what is being said, shaking up my mind, which has been going in a certain pattern, and breaking the pattern so that I can go into that which is boundless. This is the Upanishad. Now, little bit of academic information, which is that there are many Upanishads, out of which 11 Upanishads are considered to be principal Upanishads. Usually I don't go into these details, but we are in the IIT Delhi. The students would like to know the details. So there are 11 principal Upanishads, which means 11 Upanishads which are oldest Upanishads, older than the rest, and which have been commented upon by all the great acharyas, starting with Shankara. Perhaps before that, but we have no available translations or commentaries. But from there on, many teachers have commented and translated the Upanishads, the 11 principal Upanishads. Today, since we are on the subject of altered states of consciousness, or rather, I wouldn't say altered, because it's altered states of consciousness sometimes appears like altered states of consciousness brought about through the use of drugs and so on. We're not into that. We're not, of course, that is also altered, no question. We are looking at consciousness per se. What are the modes of consciousness that we normally know about? Or is there something that exists which we don't know about? And that does not, fortunately, require a test tube or an experimental physical object, because we are dealing with the mind, and the mind can deal with the mind. You don't need it. You can't put it in a test tube anyway. So today, out of the 11 principal Upanishads, I'm going to deal with an Upanishad called the Mandukya Upanishad. It's because why? Because you'll get bored. Some Upanishads are so long. There's an old Upanishad called, one of the principal Upanishads, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. The very word means it's a big forest, Brihad Aranyaka. If we young people, not me, go into it, you probably go round and round and get lost. Let's look at something concise, which gives the gist of the teachings on consciousness. And that I have picked the Mandukya because it is the shortest Upanishad among the principles. And it has only 12 verses, only 12 verses. And in these 12 verses, it has summed up the essence of what the ancients thought about consciousness. Believe me, the ancients did not accept something because somebody said. They looked, they explored, they found out there are some such illusions among people. Oh, they accepted. No, they looked critically, they discussed. In the forest academies, the students had long discussions with the teacher. They're not debates, they're dialogues. By samvada. Gita is also called a samvada, although most of the talking is done by Krishna, but it's a samvada. Iti Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishads Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Sri Krishna Arjuna Samvada. It's a samvada between Arjuna and Krishna. So, the Mandukya Upanishad belongs to the Atharva Veda, Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharva. And it has only 12 verses. Now, it's very interesting. It's perhaps academically interesting, but I'm not going into detail. Adi Shankaracharya, Shankara Bhagavatpada, wrote commentaries on so many Upanishads. Of course, he first wrote the principal Upanishads. And his teacher was Govindapada. His Govindapada's teacher was Gaudapada. Now, the standard textbook or the first discussion and commentary on the Upanishads, most ancient probably, is Gaudapada's Karika on the Mandukya Upanishad. In fact, the teachings go sometimes so close to the Buddhist teachings that some people have also said that Gaudapada was a Buddhist in disguise, which is not true. He was only he was only teaching the Upanishads. His expositions are on the Upanishad, not on Buddhism. But it's so abstract that people sometimes think that his definition of Turiya is very close to the Buddhist definition of nirvana. So, Gaudapada's commentaries on the Upanishads, called the Karikas, run into hundreds of pages of Mandukya. And Shankara's commentaries on that run into hundreds of pages. So, it's a big thing. But the Upanishad by itself is just 12 verses. And it's very simple. It doesn't tell you, do this, don't do this. No do's and don'ts. It's an exploration into the states of consciousness which are common to all human beings. Man or woman, black or white, Swiss or Indian, Loka Samasta Asukino Bhavantu is the principle for whole world, for common to all human beings. And the significance of the word Om, here divided into 3 syllables, A, U, and Ma. Through understanding the significance of the word Om, the Upanishads takes us to the understanding of the different states of consciousness common to all human beings. This is required before we go further. Now the word Mandukya. Actually, the word Manduk in Sanskrit means a frog. So some people say that it's a frog Upanishad, or someone, a rishi who taught it might have looked like a... It simply means that no matter wisdom comes even from a frog, it's wisdom. One. And second, it is because a frog is not accidentally chosen. It's a deliberate understanding. Because, frog is one of those creatures that visibly undergoes metamorphosis. First, the eggs become tadpoles with a tail, and they live in the water. Then the tail is lost, the Shika is lost, and you become a sannyasi. I'm not joking. So, from the water, then it loses its tail, and then it learns to come on earth, on the land. So till now it was in water. Now it is a land creature. But the frog can live both on land and also in water. It's an amphibian. So the student who understands the Upanishad is not otherworldly, but he sees, he lives in this world and can go to the other when he wants very smoothly. This metamorphosis of a creature that lives in water into one who can live on land and also in water when required is the illustration of the growth of the mind of the student. So, Mandukya, anyway, it's a big controversy. Somebody says there was a rishi called Mandukya who wrote it. So let's not go into that too much. We'll leave it there. Let's start. I'm going to use the Sanskrit, but only for a short, for the sloka, but then I'll translate it and try to explain. I have the text in front of me. The Mandukya starts like this. It describes the significance of Om. And it says, Om iti etad aksharam idam sarvam tasyopavakyanam bhutam bhavat bhavishyat iti sarvam omkaraiva yachanyat trikalatitam tadapi omkara eva. It says Om, A-U-M, A-U-M, Om. This syllable is all this. Is everything. There is nothing which is outside this Om. Why? It will be explained why it's said, why this is being said. It's not just a statement. Om, this syllable is all this. Now, tatopa tasya tasyo vakyanam. Now we describe why Vyakhyana is made. And what is the Vyakhyana? Explanation is all that is the past, all that is the present, and all that is the future. All this is the syllable Om. Please, this is a hypothesis right now. And whatever else there is beyond the threefold time of past, present, and future, that too is the syllable Om. Now, I think if I go on with the Sanskrit, students may get a little impatient. So I'll go on to the translation better. Instead of Sarvam he yetat Brahma and so on, all this is verily the Brahman. Second verse, the self is Brahman. This same self has four parts. Now look, this we have to look at carefully. First they said everything is Om. And then they said everything is the Brahman, which means Om is the visible symbol of the all-pervading Brahman. Brahman is not Brahma, the creator, and so on. It is the ultimate essence of life, of this creation, or even before the creation. That which exists before and that which will exist forever. Incidentally, the word Brahman derives from the root Brah. Brah means to expand, which means an ever-expanding universe. And therefore, an ever-expanding consciousness. There is no limit to consciousness. The ever-expanding consciousness is Brahman. So, everything is therefore Om and everything is therefore Brahman, which means Om is a symbol of the Brahman. Then, next step. So, is that Om or is that Brahman to be found elsewhere outside the world? The Upanishad says this self is Brahman. I am Atma Brahma, one of the Mahavakya. Myself itself is the Brahman. You don't have to look for the Brahman anywhere. It's here. Myself, I am myself. when the mind has calmed down and quietened down, in my true essence, I am that Brahman. And this Brahman, this self of mine, has four parts, or this whole consciousness, which is me. If I'm unconscious, I can't even realize that I'm there. This whole consciousness, which is me, is Upanishads divides it into four quarters just for the purpose of study. Actually, there are no parts. It's for the purpose of study. And if you look carefully, you will see that it exists in all human beings, just as described in the Upanishad. What is that? The first part of this consciousness, if it can be divided at all, except for the purpose of study, is called the Vaishvanara. And what is the Vaishvanara? Because it is that which leads all the creatures, living creatures of the world, which is prominent in all living creatures of the world. That's why it's called Vaishvanara. And what is its activity? What is its sphere of activity? The waking state. The waking state where the self cognizes the external objects. Now, of course, there is a description of 7 limbs and 18 mouths. We don't want to go into this. These are the different organs of perception described in different ways. The karma indriyas, the jnana indriyas. It's sufficient for us to understand here that the first quarter is the waking state. The first part is the waking state. It's called Jagrita Sthano, awakened state. We are all familiar with that. Every human being is familiar with that. No one is free of the waking state, I hope. And what is its function? Bahis prajna, that which recognizes everything outside the waking state. So this is the Jagrita Avastha. Isn't it common to all of us? Don't we derive the understanding of this entire world in the Jagrita? Because this is the state which recognizes the outside world. It is Jagrita Avastha now because I recognize you there on the screen. I recognize people here who are recording and who are sitting here. So I recognize myself. What happens when I wake up? First thing I recognize is, okay, I am awake. And then when I am there, I see the other. First I, then the other. If I don't know about me, I won't know about the other. So it's the basic consciousness, level of consciousness of all human beings. It's called the first quarter, which is represented by A. We'll come into that later. But Jagrita. Okay. In Jagrat, what happens? We recognize the world. We recognize that we exist. And we recognize, therefore, that the world exists. And all the 5 indriyas, the sense organs, work in the Jagrata Avastha. Eyes, ears, tongue, smell, and touch. We have no other inputs. Where are the other instruments of perception? We have only 5. Now here I want to say something interesting, which we need to look into carefully. All that we call our thought process, all that we call our rational blueprint is dependent upon the data, inputs that come from our 5 senses. There's no other way. And then the brain or the mind, whichever word you want to use, takes this data and builds up a blueprint. Oh, this is what it is, this is how it is. We have no other source except the 5 senses. Rishis of ancient times have asked this question. What if the impressions or the data gathered by the five senses? What if? May not be always, but what if? Is inaccurate. Is not accurate. Is inaccurate. If that is the case, even if few cases, then the data which the mind processes to make its own blueprint, rational blueprint, could be gone, will be wrong, could be wrong, could be, because the data is wrong. I'll give you an example. Every morning, we see the sunrise, and every evening, we see the sunset. But it was proved long ago that the sun neither rises nor sets. But if you depend on our main organ of perception, the eyes, chakshu, we see the sun rising and setting. That is the data we gather. But can we conclude because of the data that the sun is actually rising or setting, or that the world is moving? So the mind here at some point has gone beyond trusting the eyes and saying, no, no, no. That's what the eyes may be saying, but actually the sun is neither rising nor setting. We got a step further. So the sense organs, at worst, they could be misleading, the impressions that they give us. We all know that a jaundiced man cannot eat the best food that is offered to him. Food is good, but he's jaundiced. So, therefore, what the sense organs feed us, the data, the inputs, are sometimes relative, sometimes not perfect. And this whole blueprint of logic and rationality that we create is based on this. First of all, they're limited. Beyond a certain point, the eyes cannot see. Then I have to have a telescope or a microscope. Beyond a certain point, my ear cannot hear. When a bell rings, you think the bell ringing has stopped, but it has not stopped. It reverberates endlessly. But I can't hear it because my ear is built with a certain frequency. Beyond that, it cannot hear. A human being cannot hear a dog whistle. So the inputs that come from our five senses are limited. That's what I'm trying to say. And the entire blueprint that we create from that could be flawed. Could be. Please let's suspend our judgment. I'm not saying is, could be flawed. And all this happens during the waking state. And we give so much importance to the waking state, which is okay, that we don't even consider that there could be other states of consciousness other than the waking, which we all know exist actually. And therefore, the fourth sloka of the Mandukya, Swapnasthano Antaprajnaha. That means the next quarter, the next part of one's consciousness, Om or the Brahman, which is the self, is what is called the dream state. It's also called Taijasa, because you may be dreaming in utter darkness, but you see light in the dream. It's self-illumined. It doesn't require the sun. Taijasa, self-illumined. This dream state, here one recognizes internal objects. There we recognize outer objects. Here we recognize internal objects. And believe me, when in the dream, when you recognize the internal object, they are as real as the physical world in the Jagrit Avastha, where you see the physical world. It's very real. In fact, it's so real that in the dream, if a tiger is chasing you, you wake up sweating and panting and palpitating and looking around to see if the tiger is there. Because at that point, the tiger really existed in your mind. Well, Rishis have asked this question, what if one day we wake up and say, oh, this has been a great dream? We'll not go into that at the moment. Tejasa.
Tejasa, yeah.
So the dream state. So from waking state, the other mode of our consciousness is the dream state. And the dream state is so, so real. The difference between dream state and waking state is there, of course, which is I might dream that I am a king. Nowadays, that's not good. I might dream that I am the prime minister. No kings are there anyway. But when I wake up, I am still the same M living in Mandupalli who has no qualifications. So, while this M continues in my waking state every day, but in the dream state, it can change. But it is not continuous. So that continuity is not there in the dream. Every other thing is similar. We are experiencing, we are loving, we are dying, everything is happening. We are eating. So this is the next part of our consciousness, which we are all aware, common to all humanity. Everybody dreams, night dream and day dream also. We all dream. So the second part of our understanding, our self, is the dream state. But then is that all? The Upanishad says the other one, the fifth state, Yatra Supto, is called Sushupti, deep sleep, where there are not even dreams. There is no waking consciousness. There is no dream. And yet, everyone needs it. I think one of the most fast-selling drugs in the medical shops are tablets to sleep and tablets for depression. Sleep is so essential. And sleep is the third part of our consciousness. Actually, it's all one, but we are, for the purpose of study, dividing it into. In deep sleep, what happens? There is no outer cognition. There is no inner cognition, like in the dream. There is no combination of the two either. Everything is ended. But I'm sleeping. I'm not dead. I'm alive. But to all intents and purposes, I appear to be dead. There is no contact with the world, no contact with the inner world. There is no awareness, nothing is happening. I am in deep sleep. And it is so essential. Why is it essential? If you don't sleep, you go mad. So what happens in deep sleep, in Sushupti? All our identities are removed. Or at least we are not aware of our identities. I don't know who I am or where I am and what's happening, nothing. The owner of a factory and the laborer in the factory both sleep, they're equal in sleep. Perhaps the laborer sleeps better than the owner because he works hard and he goes to sleep. Owner is thinking of what will happen tomorrow. But they all sleep, and in sleep we are all equal. There is no different sleep for a Indian or for an Englishman. They are all sleep. It's the same sleep. We all sleep. And in sleep, we also seem to experience total relaxation if you're properly sleeping. Total relaxation and freedom from all worries, which is why it's essential to have sleep. The world would go madder than it already is if there was no sleep. And what happens is, even though we are not aware while we are asleep of what is happening, when we wake up, we usually say, oh, that was a blissful sleep, a wonderful sleep. The proof is that in the morning when you want to wake up, you may have an alarm. The alarm will ring and it will stop and you put it off and again sleep. Why? Because it's so blissful, so restful. You don't want to come out of it. And when we wake up, even though in deep sleep we are not aware, when we wake up, especially in that time between waking up and sleeping, twilight zone, we understand how blissful the sleep was. So the Upanishad says, if I know now that how blissful the sleep was, perhaps there was a witness there existing which didn't know at that time but now realizes. So the Upanishad says, when you divide Om into A, U, and M, A represents the waking state, the first sound. U represents the deep dream state. And represents the ending of all, which is sleep, deep sleep. So every human being in the course of one's life daily goes through birth, through life, through imaginary worlds, and ends in death, short death, sleep. Every time we sleep, it's a nice little rehearsal for the final rest. Of course, breathing is going on, so you don't die. But it's kind of an understanding of what happens after death. So A is waking, Jagrata. U is Swapna or Tejasa. And Because when you close your mouth, everything ends. And if you have to start anything new, you have to open your mouth again. So it's ended. So that is deep sleep, Sushupti. But it doesn't end there. Upanishad says that when you ring a bell, for instance, or when you say Om, when you write Om in Sanskrit, on the top you'll see a small crescent like structure and a dot. This is called an Ardhamatra in Sanskrit, which means unstuck sound, anahat. When I say Om, is it abrupt? It's like Om. That ringing of the bell that continues represents what the Upanishad Mandukya calls Turiya. Now, what could Turiya be? Turiya is defined in the Upanishad as that which cannot be defined. Are they fooling us? I don't know. That which cannot be defined, which cannot be put into words, which is subtle, subtler than even deep sleep. Huh? And it is as if in deep sleep, in the complete rest called deep sleep, awareness is there. If in deep sleep or Sushupti there is real awareness at that point, not when you wake up, of how blissful it was, but that point, then that would be Turiya. Everything is at rest, but you're aware of that complete rest. And you know, this is my true self. However, there is no way by which you can go into Turiya through Sushupti. Otherwise, it would have been very easy. You only need to sleep, and one day you go into Turiya. This is not possible. You cannot go into Turiya through Sushupti, but through Sushupti, you can understand what roughly Kriya could be. Turiya could be in our limited mode of thinking. I'm saying this because I think our mode of thinking is quite limited. We need to go beyond. That will be then tomorrow's discussion. We won't go into that because I'll continue with the rest of the slokas. So I think we will stop here for the time being and open to questions for maybe half an hour or so. So this will be the procedure every day's talk. So I think I have kind of introduced us into the study of consciousness as in the human being, not with the electrodes attached and all that kind of thing. We'll look into that later. But at the moment, looking into our consciousness, which anybody, you and me, any common person can do without taking the help of any gadget. We all know we have a waking state. We all know we have a dream state. We all know we have deep sleep, hopefully. Only thing we don't know is about Turiya, if there's such a state existing or not. And The entire study of the Upanishads is to take one there step by step. So may I now close today's class?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, hello, sir. So I wanted to ask this that you started with saying that the Upanishad starts with describing the Om and Brahman, that all that there is Brahman and it is represented by Om. But then we are only talking about the states of consciousness in which these states are only experienced by the living and sentient beings. For example, the table and non-living things do not experience these states. Then why are we calling when we are calling everything as Brahman, but we are describing only the conscious beings. So can you elaborate on this?
Say that again. I didn't get your question.
The Upanishad was saying everything that is around us and including us is Brahman, and it is represented as Om. But the Upanishad is only describing the consciousness, which is only experienced and felt by the sentient living beings.
Okay. So are you saying that a table, for instance, which is not a sentient, like a living being,
Does this have consciousness?
No, does it have consciousness? Is that the question?
Yeah, yes.
No. Is there any way by which we can know that the table also has some form of consciousness, even though it may be quite rudimentary? Is there any way we can find out? No.
It depends on how you define this thing, that what is the mechanism of how do we ascribe something as
Exactly.
determinant of a
Right.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to tell you something interesting. Consciousness in its highest state of evolution, at the moment, highest state of evolution, is in the human being who can recognize that I am conscious. Right? A living being can recognize that I am conscious, while a non-living being there may be conscious, but it cannot recognize that it is conscious. I can say, yes, I exist. A table generally wouldn't say I exist because it doesn't have the evolutionary mechanism called the brain by which it can recognize consciousness. But that does not mean that there is some form of rudimentary consciousness even in that. As far as living things are concerned, even the single-celled organism called amoeba is fully conscious. It divides itself, it spreads itself, it eats, it drinks. But a physical object doesn't do that. So we often say, oh, how can it be conscious? Right? Slowly, let's proceed. Now, do you think trees are conscious?
I mean, you can define something and call them conscious because they have some underlying processes.
Correct. They are doing some processes where they don't have a brain. This is what I'm trying to tell you. They don't have a fixed spot in the tree like a human being where there is a physical organism called brain which is supposed to be coordinating the consciousness. It doesn't have. And yet, every cell in the tree probably has some kind of intelligence. Now, intelligence means consciousness. Without that, there is no intelligence. Now, why? Because when there is no water, the roots of the tree go and try to find water. There is no brain, which means there is inbuilt intelligence in it. Inbuilt intelligence means there can be no intelligence without some consciousness. Okay? Then, when there is no sunshine, then the branches grow this way so that they can get the sun. And photosynthesis is an activity that is going on in the tree. So now we have come from a conscious human being who's conscious of consciousness to that which is a tree, which is also seems to be conscious and intelligent in some way, even though it does not have a brain, an organ of consciousness. Okay, next step.
I mean, I understand that you can extend it to the processes of the physical universe.
Slowly we can go there. Let's go there.
But then the follow-up question would be then all of them would be like the Sushupti state, because even in our Sushupti state, there are processes going inside our brain and we are not conscious of it. And so even the plants, they are not conscious of it. So are we saying that all of these then are Sushupti, only this one state of consciousness, which is the Sushupti?
No. Sushupti is the word used particularly to describe the human state, not the tree state.
Okay.
It is because The human being, fortunately, is able to understand this himself. The tree, you cannot ask the tree anyway, but even I don't believe a tree cannot answer, but we probably won't hear what the answer is. You see, in ancient times when they worship trees, if you worship trees, will you cut trees? No. So that saved a lot of cutting of trees, which is rampant today. We need timber, I understand. Okay, now the next step. The physical object, which is not a tree, even though the wood may have been cut from the tree, but it's not. So it's neither looking for water nor looking for sunshine, right? But what is it made of? Molecules. And what are molecules made of? Atoms. And what are atoms made of? Quantum units. Now, all these quantum units seem to behave in certain ways, even though they don't have a physical brain. They react, they behave in certain ways. The electron moves from one shell to the other. What decides how it moves?
Yeah, there's
I'm
an
only
underlying process, or you can.
underlying. So all I'm saying is, as a hypothesis,
Mm,
don't rule out the fact that even an inanimate object may be having some consciousness. Let's keep it, suspend our judgment. That's all I'm saying, and then proceed from there.
So the four states are only for humans, like the other
Yes.
living
No,
beings.
only living beings can recognize this. But the rishis say, and it is also the experience of people who have moved a little bit on this path, that once you feel and understand your consciousness in all your three states, then you can also probably feel the consciousness which is not active in inanimate beings also. There's no instrument by which it can be measured except our mind, our consciousness.
Mm.
So
Or
first we
they
should
could be like different categories for different
quite possible,
things.
quite possible,
Mm.
quite possible. When you ancient hymns are there, Aushadhiya Shanti, may the trees be at peace. So next, shall we shift?
Yeah, thank
We'll
you.
meet again. I like the question. Okay.
Home is just the explanation of different stages of conscious, or by chanting these mantras, we can actually attain different stages of conscious. Mantra chanting changes the consciousness stages, and how we can physiologically measure it. What are the correlates of the mantra chantings, which we can measure in.
Right. So, okay, first, let me tell you this. The Upanishads, the function of the Upanishads is to explain the deep inner meanings and the correlation of the mantras. This is the function of the Upanishads. But there is a completely different section which is called the science of chanting and mantras. In the Samhita portion, for instance, there is a mantra called the Gayatri in the Rig Veda. The mantra is so important that all the chandas or all the ways of chanting in that entire section are called Gayatri chandas. And the Gayatri mantra has a meaning as well as an effect. In the same way, Om, the philosophical, psychological, and the atmic understanding of Om is explained by the Upanishads. How to chant the sounds of Om or other mantras is described in the Mantra Shastras, not in the Upanishad per se. These are the philosophical sections. If you go to the Mantra Shastra, then there are modes and means by which you can use the mantras to bring about changes in our system as well as systems outside us. Yes. Now, for that, one needs to first stimulate and awaken our intelligence from the gross to the subtle. The Gayatri Mantra's main function is what? What does it ask for, the Gayatri? Dhiyo yona prachodayat. May my intelligence be stimulated. So when the intelligence is stimulated, then you understand the meaning of the first part. Om Bhuvasva. What you're asking for, unless and until the mind has been purified, cleared, and made sharp and one-pointed, you cannot bring about change using the mantras. So the whole process of Mantra Shastra is to make you fit to bring about the change in you through the use of sounds, use of mantras. That we will discuss when we come to the last part of the module given to me, which is practical modules. We will come to that. I'll give you, because you asked me the question, Nitish, I will give you a section on mantra chanting also. There's no problem. But at the moment, what I want to tell you is the Upanishads deal with the inner aspects. So the essence of the Upanishad is very simple. It simply means that in you, in the core of your consciousness, the Supreme Self resides. When you tune in with that, for tuning in with that, you will require the help of rhythmic chanting, mantras, and everything. When you touch that self, then that self can influence other selves. So why I didn't go into the sound aspect and the chanting aspect of Om is because here we are looking at the philosophical aspect of Om. But since we are on the subject, let me tell you there are very different forms of chanting Om. There is two samples I'll show you. One is one, two. Om. Do you see the difference?
Yes.
Yes. One starts with goes slowly into U, and then ends with Ma. The second starts with O, A and U together, becoming O. And lot of stress is laid on the last syllable, Ma. Om. Each has a certain effect. You know, the last syllable Om sound, it heals the body, regenerates the body, makes the cells more active. Now, this has to be experimented, of course, since you are all scientists and so on. But we think so. It's our experience that it is so. And it's the most common sound that you hear when people are convalescing in hospitals, for instance. Somebody is very sick, they're convalescing. You go there, the most common sound you hear is mm, 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 naturally, because the mind knows that this is the sound that soothes the cells and the whole system. So each mantra in the Mantra Shastra applies to a certain function. But since the subject here is to understand self-discovery, so I started, see, in the ancient Shastras, the Upanishads especially, there are several functions. In fact, they're called saptaparnas, 7 petals. You start with one and you go deeper and deeper into the other layers. So we are dealing with one, philosophical now, which will connect us to the psychological and the inner. And then when we come to the practicals of how to touch it, then we'll go into all the mantra and this and that. I hope.
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
I was understanding, Triya, that's the word you use, right? Uh, the fourth state is Triya.
Turiya.
Turiya. And some confusion about being the same as the Buddhist state where
Nirvana.
the nirvana. And I was just wondering, does it really, I mean,
I am being a little direct, but does it really matter whether they are the same or not? Because even if they are the same, it doesn't matter. And unless one experiences it, it really is.
I was only saying, yeah, you're right. I'm only saying that some places it has been called nirvana. Uh, and what the Upanishads declare as Purna has also been defined as Shunya. In the Buddhist terminology, Shunya. But Shunya doesn't mean nothing. It doesn't mean it is a negation. Shunya means that which cannot be explained in any other way, but which is the source of all that is there in this world, which is the same as Purna. You know what I'm trying to say? That people go completely out of tune because they discuss the denominations and the words used and so on. Finally, it is, you're right, it is the same. There is no
But
difference.
sir, yeah. But my question now, I'm coming to it is, given that I fall into the seeker category. Like I haven't experienced either of the states, neither nirvana nor turiya.
Right, right.
And you have perhaps a deeper understanding in terms of progress, how to determine which of the, if I can use the word paths, is most suitable for.
That depends, sir, on your mental build up and what you like, and it depends on your capabilities, the seeds that you carry with you in your mind. It's difficult for me to say that in a black and white fashion. I mean, I can't make a blanket statement on that. But I am saying that whichever way you approach, which appeals to you, if you follow it properly and intelligently, then surely you can reach the goal. That I have no question. Sincerity and application of one pointedness is the key. It's not what is the mode. The mode could be anything.
I understand.
So I have two questions. So first of all, uh, how to expand the consciousness beyond our body. So whenever I close my eyes, I can feel an area beyond which I can do something. So say if I'm like I want to move my hand, I can do that, but I cannot move anything in my surrounding. So I'm not talking about the area. I do not want to talk about that, but that may be the higher stage. But beyond this body, a little bit, how I can expand. So that is my first question.
1 minute. When you say how I can expand, are you talking about being able to touch and operate things which are outside your body and outside your reach, or are you saying that you want to feel conscious not only in the body but also outside? Which one are you looking at?
Sir, both I think, because I want to feel whatever.
They are two are different.
Okay.
You need to first see the first before you go to the second. Uh, you know, when we live in this world, our brain decides our space. First of all, understand that there are two brains in the body. There's only one brain, but there are two sections. It's called the left brain and the right brain. The right brain takes care of some functions, and the left brain takes care of some functions. Right? The right brain is the intuitive brain, and the left brain is the practical brain. It's all same. It's in the same. I'm saying the locations where these are nowadays. Neurologists have gone deep into this, little bit deep into this. So it is the right brain, which is the intuitive brain, that says, "Look, I am Gajanan Varma. I am this high. This is my size, and this is my reach. I cannot go beyond this." And I'm conscious of myself. I'm not conscious of the other. If you have a girlfriend, she's conscious of herself and you are conscious of yourself. You are not conscious of her. I mean, her consciousness you don't know, right?
Right.
So I want you to read a book before we get back into this called My Stroke my stroke, STROKE, of insight, INSIGHT, my stroke of insight by someone called Jill Bolst, BOLST. She, because you go through that, then we will discuss. This is your homework. Jill Bolst. Now, Jill Bolst was herself a pathologist. You know who's a pathologist? One who deals with the system. And one day, at a young age, she suddenly had a stroke. That's why she calls it the stroke of insight. And what happened is a brain hemorrhage, stroke, brain hemorrhage. What happened was the blood vessel broke in her brain, and it happens sometimes. It's a rare thing, but it happened. And her left brain was fully flushed with blood, and therefore it stopped functioning. Now, remember that the left brain is the practical brain, which decides where I am. This is my space. This is the other space. Arithmetic, mathematics, everything is looked after by the left brain. Measurement, space, idea of measurement, idea of space, that completely got paralyzed because of this. She recovered from it afterwards, which was a miracle by itself. So when that happened, only her right brain was functioning for some time. Now, this right brain is the intuitive brain. It doesn't measure. It's more intuition, consciousness, feeling. It rests in the right brain. So when this happened, suddenly she realized, somehow she managed to make a telephone call for emergency. After that, that also was over. She could not even remember numbers. Somehow she did that as soon as it started because she knew it was coming. When this only her right brain was working, the intuitive brain, she suddenly found that her body consciousness or her consciousness was not confined to her body consciousness, physical body consciousness. There was a bird sitting on the tree in front of her in the garden and chirping away. She found that it was not the bird, but she who was chirping from there. There were no boundaries to her consciousness. You know what I mean? She was the plant, the tree which was swaying in the wind. She was, not the tree. The whole world became her. She was not separated from it as a small part of space. The whole space broke and there was everything together as one. Now, the experiences which the yogis speak of and the Vedantis speak of are very similar experiences. Not through hemorrhage, but similar experience. So, so I want you to go through this book, and we are going to have many more sessions, and then come back, do your homework, and we'll work further.
Sure.
Just a small comment. There's a TED talk by the same person that's available, a 15 minutes video.
Oh, really?
I'll just
See.
post it. Yes.
You can listen to that.
Yeah.
Guruji, I have a very two fundamental questions. The first one is in modern neuroscience, consciousness is considered as the awareness.
Okay.
However, this term has a completely different meaning in our shastras.
Yes.
So, in what manner this particular terminology is different from two perspectives? One is a neuroscience and the other is our shastra's perspective.
Right. So, what is the question?
So my question is, in what manner this particular term has a two different perspectives? Sorry, this particular term is different in her two perspectives.
Okay. I would say that neurology has to go a little more further before it comes to the understanding of what we are trying to say. Neurology has gone along, it's grown quite a deal, but it still has to understand more. It has to understand the other organs of perception that the human being has, even in his physical body, even in the brain. 20% of our brain is enough for us to function in this world, to study, to go to IIT, for everything. 20% of our brain is enough. what is the other 80% doing? When the neurologists begin to go into that, they will probably begin to understand the perspective of consciousness which we are talking about. When I say we, I mean those who are yogis, those who are experienced the Vedantic understanding and so on. So I fully appreciate the neurologists. I think they should continue with the research and carry on with it till they reach the understanding of what the Vedanta is trying to say. They're not two things. It's a. I would rather say that if a neurologist comes to this understanding and says, this is what it is, people are likely to accept it more than a layman like me saying that. So,
Okay.
Ankit, I want you to read the Upanishads. I want you also to study some good books by neurologists. I would recommend one of my friends, good friends, book called Phantoms in the Brain by Vilenu Ramachandran. V. Ramachandra. He's a neurologist at the moment, a very famous, important neurologist living in San Diego, United States. I want you to first read the book called Phantoms in the Brain.
Okay, correct.
And then after reading that, then we can further the discussion on this. We also believe that the brains and the neurons, the neurons in the brain are as very important to understand not only ourselves, but the consciousness which is outside our body, beyond our body, beyond the limitations. But we study it in a little different way than the neurologists study it. But I have a feeling that in a 50 years or so, roughly, I'm just speculating, that this will meet. And that meeting will be a tremendous revelation for the world. So I have great respect for neurologists because the only thing I ask is please don't rule out that there are other ways of arriving at the truth than the ways which you are talking about. Huh?
Okay. Ji.
Yeah. So give it some thought. Food for thought for you.
Ji. And another question, very small question.
Yes,
So,
please.
in as you have said, ki there must be some link between the neurons and the consciousness, whichever you talk about. So, modern neuroscience considers the three states, the waking state, dreaming state, and deep sleep state, as emerging from the interaction between individual neurons or the interaction between distinct brain regions.
Okay.
So, in what sense the fourth state, the Turiya state, is linked to the neuronal interactions? Where is the starting?
The problem, Ankit, is that the neurologist is not even thinking about Turiya, the fourth state.
Okay.
So they're not even discussing what neurological reactions are taking place in Turiya, because as far as they're concerned, I think the Turiya does not exist. Only three states exist: waking, dream, and deep sleep.
Okay.
Now, having said that, I must also say that now there is a lot of neurological interest among the scientists on the state where people are in a, what's it called? They appear totally unconscious. Coma.
Okay.
Coma states are now coming into mainstream neurology. And I think as they experiment and go deep into the understanding of the coma state, they will probably then begin to think of Turiya, what it could be. Or catch hold of a yogi who is experiencing these different states, put them in a neurological lab, put all the electrodes and see what's happening. This is also possible.
Okay.
I'm not ready, but
Ji,
I'm
Guru.
worried about the electrodes. What if I go in as M and come out as C or somebody who knows? I'm joking, Ankit. So, okay, right. Thank you.
So you talked about this altered state of consciousness, specifically this person, this lady, Jill Bolte Taylor, who had a stroke and got into a different state of consciousness. You also talked about Ramachandra, and in one of his documentaries, he describes what is called a temporal lobe epilepsy. And one particular case that he describes this person having a temporal lobe epilepsy actually starts believing that he is the god, which is same as the Aham Brahmasmi statement that you made in this thing earlier.
So this is what we have to be very careful about. There are many such gods perhaps in India also or around the world. So, well, the science of yoga and the science of Vedanta are step-by-step systematic movement into these things. They're not like something that happened suddenly, all of a sudden. Perhaps that guy feels he's God because he finds his consciousness expanded and he has no other idea of what it could be. This is also possible. But what I'm trying to say, temporal lobe epilepsy, for instance, means that certain parts of the temporal lobe, the neurons, are overactive. This is the case. We believe that there are many parts of the brain which can be activated, which are now not active. Yeah, but that is not done with an instrument or an electric charge or something, but through proper one-pointed attention and meditative techniques coupled with sound. So these go in a very controlled fashion, or you can say laboratory conditions, yogic laboratory conditions. So there is no chance of that turning into something like what Ramchandran describes in the temporal lobe epilepsy patient. In fact, there are known cases of some great poetry being written by people who have temporal lobe epilepsy. So, which means that the potential is there. And as far as the neurologists can see today, they see isolated cases where it has happened accidentally and where the person who experienced himself doesn't know what's going on. Here we are saying the same thing can be done properly, step by step, so that the neurons can actually be activated as we want. So then this comes to the next question. Can we consciously interfere with the neurons? Our consciousness is produced by the neurons, generally, most of what we call consciousness. Can that consciousness influence the neurons? So these are wider questions. Maybe we can go into it again as we go along.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you,
the
sir.
question was more from the point of view of person having these experiences,
Yes.
that the person could think that he has got realization, but he may be hallucinating or getting other kinds of things. So how does one distinguish?
That I will explain as we go along.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because there are some perfect criteria for that from the yogic point of view. If that does not exist, the person is probably undergoing hallucination.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
So we'll meet again next session. Thank you very much. It was
Thank
enjoyable,
you.
wonderful discussion. I'm so glad. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.